7?
Yes.
Thank you. Suzanne,
Yeah,
I'm completely comfortable with you just taking the helm at the start.
And I checked with legal, and there's no formal process for transitioning that leadership. So we'll just note it down in our meeting minutes, and you can do your thing.
Sounds great.
All right, bear with me here, guys. Almost there.
Thanks for troubleshooting for us, Conrad.
All right. We're good, guys.
Awesome. And Katie, we do have a quorum.
I am going to admit to everyone that I have been a little disorganized this week, and I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne.
Okay, I am going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with roll call. Katie.
Present.
Myself, I am present. Patrick.
Present.
John.
Here.
Bill.
Bill is trying to join the meeting, and we're having technical difficulties. Okay. That's there.
I'll circle back to Bill. Kimberly.
Present.
Mike.
Here.
Marilee.
Hello.
And Bill. Not yet. Okay. All right. Well, we do have a quorum. Hopefully, Bill will be able to get on shortly. Next agenda item is the approval of the minutes from the August 19th meeting. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Marilee and Mike sort of tied for second. So Marilee, motion carries. Okay.
Okay.
Next up, we have announcements. And is this your agenda item, Megan?
Well, it's for the board, so if anybody has announcements, feel free to speak up. But I actually do have an announcement while I have the floor. So first, we have a new member joining us, and for town council, the council meeting on September 28th, that is when the agenda item will be pushed through. So for the October meeting, hopefully our new member will join us. And then secondly, we have a quick update from Val actually on the EV updates. We looked into that policy information and what it would take to get into the legislation process. And Val has a little presentation for us.
Okay, great.
Hello, everyone. Give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen really quickly because I think it might be helpful for you to read a little bit about what I'm about to show you. Let's see. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
I'm hoping so. Okay, great. So these are the next. So, well, let me just like recap really quickly. So when it comes to the NC Building Code Council, I know we had discussed the bill from earlier this year that would have amended the council for 1 and 2 family dwellings to require that new residential construction include an electric circle capable of accommodating an EV charging device. So making it easier for EV charging for new residential construction for these 1 and 2 unit houses. That was filed March 22nd. It passed the first reading the next day, and it was referred to the House Committee on Local Government, and it's been in committee ever since. So a lot of times bills might just die in committee, and that seems like what's happened with this one since there hasn't been any updates since March, and now it's September. So the other option to move forward with changing the building code, since it won't be through this bill likely, at least as of right now, is you can make a motion to amend a part of the building code. The policy to do that is not crazy, not super extensive, but like there's like very specific rules you'd have to follow, like submitting 21 copies of the proposed amendment. You'd have to find specifically where in the building code, like what you're trying to change in the building code. With that application, and I can definitely go into more details about that, but just the general idea is presenting a motion to amend it to the council, and there's a specific timeline that has to be followed for that as well. So the timeline example for that would be you would have to submit this petition, this motion to amend the code by November 1st. I'm not at the soonest. I tried to use the timeline as like because the meetings are like quarterly. So the soonest you could submit a motion if you wanted to go down this route is November 1st. There's the petition will be granted at the next Building Code Council meeting, which is in December. There's a notice of a hearing in January, committee review. And it's a pretty long process just because the meetings are not that frequent. But if you submitted it by November 1st of this year, then it all went well, then it would be approved next September. So again, almost a year-long process. There'd be some work that would be required to do so in regards to like finding what part of the code this would affect and what kind of language to use. But that's essentially what the next step could potentially be, since this bill there's not really a lot happening with it as of March. So that is what I had to share. Let me know if you have any questions.
John, I can see you speaking, but you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Okay, the petitioning party would need to be the town council. It couldn't be the environmental board, could it? That's the way I read that.
Let me pull up. I'm not sure it would have to be the town council. It says the building code council may revise or amend the code upon application from any person, state agency, or political subdivision.
Yeah,
so it doesn't have to be the council. It could literally be a person or a group of people, I imagine, but.
On your slide, Val, did I see something about an economic impact analysis as well? Would that have to be done concurrently with the petition?
Yes. Let me find the details on that. Let me just share my screen again really quickly. Let me see. Sorry. Where did it go? Sorry, give me 1 second. Technical difficulties as always. So I did look into the economic impact analysis. I don't think the details of that are in the presentation, but they are in my notes because I looked into that aspect as well. Let me just find it really quickly for you.
And we can certainly take outstanding questions that we don't necessarily know the answer to right now and update you on that next time. Or through an email?
If I remember correctly, so the building code, like there has to be an economic impact analysis, but I don't. There's a process that you guys wouldn't have to do that yourselves. Once you submit it once everything else is submitted like properly to like the secretary of the building code council, then there's someone on the end, like on their end, that would help conduct that analysis, I want to say. But I will 100% confirm and have Megan send that update out in an email. But that is an aspect of the motion to amend for the petition.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Val, can you send us the slides? Just the one that had the details. I couldn't read all the way through it, but I'd like to look at it carefully.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That would be helpful, yes.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions, I'm sure Megan can send out that presentation whenever is convenient, but I can also add information to that slide with any outstanding questions, such as more details on the economic impact analysis. So just let me know.
I think Bill would probably like to see that slide also.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, do we need to sort of come to a consensus on whether or not we want to move forward or not? Okay. Okay, thank you, Val. Any other thoughts regarding Val's update or the topic at hand? Okay. Next up, we have committee updates, Tree Cap and Bee City.
Yes, we do. Okay. So for Tree Cap, I'll make this short. Our last meeting was September 2nd. At Peak Fest, they joined us at the booth and gave away 50 trees, which is awesome. There was a variety, all were native, supplied from Project Pando. They had a QR code stapled to them, and that QR code led them to how to correctly plant a tree. So amazing stuff. Great work on their part, and Veronica as well. And as far as the tree planting program goes, which went live this month, they received almost 200 applications in just the first week, which is amazing. And just as a reminder, their cap was 100. So clearly this is a really popular program. Residents in Apex really want trees, which is a great sign. So hopefully, we can get more funding for this next year and grow the program. As far as Bee City committee goes, the neighborhood recognition program, we had a presentation from Caitlin, the committee chair, a couple of months ago, and she mentioned this program. It should be going live in the first week in October. So it's still in draft format, but once it is, we can circle back, and I'll also kind of discuss this later on in the agenda, talking about potentially adopting it in the suggested environmental zoning conditions list. And that is all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, next up we have the pre-application meeting, the retreat at Cedar Crossing. I guess, Megan, could you go ahead and admit the applicants for us, please?
Okay, I am admitting Justin and Neil.
Hello.
Welcome, gentlemen, to the EAB meeting.
Hi, Justin and Neil. I'm Suzanne Mason. I'm the vice chair. I am currently running this meeting this afternoon. We are here to talk about the retreat at Cedar Crossing. If you all could go ahead and talk about your project, give us a presentation, and then we will discuss it with you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Mason. And good evening, everyone, I suppose. So this project, the Retreat at Cedar Crossing, was approved some time ago, and it is an age-restricted community consisting of around 88 homes. And essentially all we're doing here with this application is adjusting the play lawn requirement. So actually this exhibit that's up on the screen is very helpful. The area from the gazebo to the right-hand side of that page was always identified as the amenity area, and the area left of the gazebo was identified previously as a play lawn. However, what we are proposing to do is to minimize or eliminate the play lawn and instead provide a more programmatic amenity there, which we think makes a lot more sense given the demographic of the residents at this age-restricted community. So as you can see on this exhibit, what we're planning instead of a play lawn area are trails, which will go through a wildflower and pollinator garden. And so that's going to be like kind of like a cutting garden where you can go and put some flowers and, you know, if you like them, and take them back to your honey or whatever. You know, we think that that'll be a more useful amenity in this community. We did receive some recommendations from the EAB. Well, actually just one, and it was to add a pet way station, and we are committing to doing that. We will be doing that. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We have Justin Brown on the call with us as well. So happy to hear from you all and hopefully have your recommendation.
Okay, thank you so much. Folks from the board, do you have any questions for Justin or Neil?
I just think the pollinator garden is great. Thank you.
I think the plan looks great as well. My question is, will you be adding any impervious pavement that wasn't in the original plan?
That's a fair question. I'm going to flip it to Justin for that. He's available.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes. There you go.
Okay. I'm Justin Brown with ESE Consultants, the engineer of record for the PUD amendment application, as well as subsequently designing from a construction document revision perspective this alternative amenity arrangement. And to answer the question relative to impervious, the original plan actually integrated about 10,000 square feet of impervious for this. I'll air quote this as a future amenity space. So the original approved PUD plan, as well as construction document plan, really identified about 10,000 square foot allotment of an impervious surface in this subject area here for this future amenity space design. So there won't be any additional impacts to the stormwater control measures that this subsequently drains to an actual wet pond facility just to the southeast of this development.
Thanks, Justin.
And this is Jessica Bolin with the Stormwater Department. I can confirm that from the pre-app meeting we had with the applicant.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Justin. Mike Rusher here. Thanks for hopping on tonight. I had a question about the pickleball courts specifically because selfishly I know that's catching on like wildfire everywhere right now. Great little sport. Perfect for the community, I think. With that being said, I was curious. Item 6 on the EAB's recommendation list has to deal with lighting efficiency, and so I have a duty to ask about any lights planned here, and would like y'all to check out section A, B, C, and D under section 6 for our recommendations and how they might overlap with your plans.
Oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I did want to clarify, not that the feedback you've given isn't helpful, but I just wanted to clarify that really the amendment to the plan isn't the area where the pickleball courts are. It's the area west of the gazebo on this exhibit. However, you're correct that the EAB does have some guidance and recommendations about lighting, and we're happy to take those into consideration and look into that.
This is Suzanne Mason. I see that you have 7 trees indicated in that area. Is that all the trees that you intend on planting?
Let me ask Mr. Brown if this is indicative of the entire landscape plan for this area. Well, at least tree plan. Justin, can you speak on that?
So to answer that question, yes, that is the extent of the trees within this subject area. There is some existing trees that have been planted by the mail kiosk area already out there currently in the southwest corner of this area. Yep, right where Amanda is circling there. So there is some landscaping that has already been placed out there in and around that mail kiosk area. But as far as the actual additional landscaping that we're proposing, yes, it's that coupled with obviously the wildflower area that's noted internal to those 2 circles, as well as around the perimeter of that I'll call it hourglass walking trail.
Okay, and so with regard to that garden, 2 questions related to that. Do you plan on installing irrigation, and what is the plan for ensuring that that's going to exist in perpetuity? Because there are going to be some maintenance costs for the HOA to assume to keep that going.
So Justin, if you can touch on irrigation, because I don't know.
So we are currently contemplating this area from a design perspective. We're evaluating that approach, and we're looking into the potential of irrigation, but we haven't committed to it yet. We are looking to obviously get some native species plantings from a viability perspective in the heat of North Carolina here. So, but we haven't gotten that far into the design parameters itself. Once we select the actual plantings within the wildflower areas, we'll coordinate with our landscape group relative to irrigation requirements.
And then to answer the second part of your question, yes, I mean, this is an HOA amenity, and so the idea is that the HOA would be able to maintain it in perpetuity. So that would be figured in as part of the budget for this HOA.
And would it be written into their covenants somehow, or what's to say that an HOA board that gets on there says, you know what, we no longer want this line item in our budget? That's it.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Amanda has raised her hand, which is very interesting because I assume she can speak whenever she'd like.
Since this is being proposed as a zoning condition, then zoning compliance officers will be able to ensure enforcement. So if the HOA for some reason quit taking care of it and quit replanting if necessary, then and we received a complaint about it, became aware of it, then there could be enforcement to require the HOA to plant the wildflower pollinator garden.
Okay, thank you.
And I was going to add that it also, because it's part of the plan, like it can be something else, right? So essentially, the worst case scenario is that it's lost to neglect, which I'm not saying is impossible, but it's not like someone turning into a playground or a pool or something like that.
Yeah, I was more concerned about it. Yeah, going into disrepair, or I mean, I wouldn't even mind ecological succession just taking over and this becoming just like a tiny natural area in the corner. I think that would be the best possible option for this space because it would complement the habitat across the street nicely. But I do understand that you are trying to install an amenity for the neighborhood. Circling back to the lighting question, are you installing lights on the pickleball court to allow nighttime play?
Justin, do you know whether there is a lighting plan for the pickleball court?
No, I mean, again, we're getting into the construction document phase of this, and we'll be more than happy to actually look into the potential for lighting the bocce ball court. As we all know, it gets terribly warm during the day, and understand that if it was lit, people could enjoy it, especially in the summertime when it's extremely hot during the day.
And so then the buffer there along the back side, if you did install lights, would that be dense enough to sort of shield those homes from that lighting? Or could you plant additional plants back there to increase the shielding from that nighttime lighting? Because I do notice that those houses do back right up to the property line.
So the actual homes themselves, you're talking about the Deer Park subdivision to the north?
Yes, that's correct.
So it's actually a pretty interesting setup. I personally went out here and looked at it. So we actually have some proposed landscaping within this buffer itself. On top of, there's an existing, it almost looks like an existing tree canopy that is off of our subject property as well. That will remain, and then there is a retaining wall along that back property line in the Deer Park subdivision. So the elevation criteria in between those is relatively probably about 10 to 12 feet higher than this area. So if you had a downward shield light for the pickleball court itself, the light wouldn't spill over into that subject property.
And
Okay.
the Unified Development Ordinance also requires house side shields for lighting that's adjacent to residential. So there will be that shield on the back of the light to help ensure that it's pointed away from the residential.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments from the board?
I had raised my hand earlier, but
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
that's fine. It was to share an existing site plan, but Amanda popped that up there for everybody to take a look at. Thank you.
This is Bill Jensen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I reviewed this when I was on council a while back, and there was 9 homes that were going to have 3 kilowatts of solar. And I wrote you guys earlier that with the change in solar, I'd like to see 20 homes with 4 kilowatts. And I'd like to hear your response.
Yeah, we got your email earlier today, and I will say we have not, been able to evaluate that. So tonight, I couldn't tell you that we would be able to do that. And I will say that, this is a pretty minor change to the community that you oversaw when you were on council. And I think that, we're still committing to the 9 homes with solar. And I think that with this amendment, I'm not sure that it wasn't really in the scope of things that we were considering. But you did send your email, and we got that, and we're evaluating that. But, tonight I couldn't tell you that we would be in a position to do that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll just jump in here, Bill, and I sent an email earlier, but I know that it was pretty close to the meeting time, so you may not have seen it. But I apologize for the confusion and allowing those recommendations to go through. So this project, as Neil said, is just an amendment for that area that is up on the screen here around the wildflower garden.
I didn't understand that. I thought it was going to be a complete rezoning.
Right. Thank you.
Well, just as a heads up, when I was on council, we were a lot lighter on solar than this actual new council is. So that's just a heads up where that might head in terms of adding that, because the feeling is that the development community has the responsibility to work towards a better environment and to take responsibility for the global warming situation and do their small part. That's all. And that tied into when I was requesting the HARES index be 60 or below. As I noted, other developers are doing that. And I look at Toll Brothers as being one of the premium national builders, and I would hope you folks would certainly consider that.
Yeah, so, and Mr. Jensen, you sent us some information about that as well. I will say that is a little, I mean, it's a little new for us. We actually don't know at this time what kind of HERS index the homes in this community are hitting. And so it's really hard for us to evaluate whether 60 is attainable, but we certainly appreciate the information you sent. And again, it's something that we are looking into.
Okay. One of the companies is putting out 60, I think it's 66 or 67 HERS index. And I don't know what the other company was, but I knew it was below 60 at that time. And as I noted in my email, you add some solar to these things. And if you've done the rest of it, trying to reach a low HERS index, you'll definitely go below 60 in my opinion. But I don't have all the data. But that's the recommendation. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've sort of generally indicated that these are going to be pollinator-friendly flora, and that does sort of align with one of our recommendations, which would be Section 2, number C, or letter C, number 1, plant pollinator-friendly flora. And do you all do intend to plant native flora? Is that correct, for like the trees?
And the flowers there. I mean, it's kind of necessary for a successful flower garden in North Carolina. I mean, we're going to have to plant flowers that are actually going to grow.
Could you all entertain perhaps doing, there's another item that we have, I know you said you wanted it to be primarily more of a cutting garden, and that's not to say that this would be mutually exclusive, but perhaps select plants that do provide a variety of food sources as the year goes on. So nectar, pollen, berries, it's things that sort of bloom in succession.
Oh, I mean, you're saying as a commitment? I don't know, but yeah, I think that the idea will be to have something blooming in this garden, year round, so that it is a useful amenity year round.
Okay. And sort of I'm just kind of going through our list, and this one does sort of fall under 2E, install community gardens and native pollinator. It's sort of a demonstration garden. But coupled in that, we would, or I would like to see less irrigation. So hopefully the plants that are selected can sort of fill all these wishes, and that they don't require a lot of water, and that they will bloom throughout the year and fruit throughout the year to provide food sources and nectar sources. So those are all the things that I would recommend. I think just by nature of what you're proposing, you are hitting on a lot of them, so I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think we were assuming that the suggested environmental zoning condition write-up sheet had been reviewed ahead of time. I would feel comfortable moving forward with this. With the recommendations that the lighting efficiency pieces in section 6 of our suggested environmental zoning conditions go through as recommended actions for this approval. So I say that I know there's potential, Neil. I know you guys are in the design stage. I know there's a lot of blanks to be filled in. I think there's concern about the neighboring community behind. There's already conditions in place for houses because they're so close. But you know, as this progresses and moves forward, you know, to your next stage, I think it'd probably behoove you to items A, B, C, and D in your lighting conditions to help it move.
I'd just like to note, Megan, when you put the list together, I realize the scope of this rezoning is narrow, but there were recommendations both about lighting.
That's right.
And I would still like to see that noted, and I'd like to see the recommendation about solar noted as well for council to see. And then, you know, they can decide the scope and what needs to be included.
Okay, I just want to, we can certainly do that. Amanda, will you confirm that we can do that since this rezoning doesn't cover that area?
Well, the rezoning is covering the subdivision, but the intent of the amendment is just for this small area. Given the scope of the change, that degree of you can certainly suggest it, but you know, I don't know that.
Understood.
I'm trying to think of the word to explain. It's basically roughly proportional to the request.
I completely understand. I just think those are recommendations made by members of our committee, and they should be noted.
Sure.
Can we note that the lighting really also needs to be addressed with the gardens and making sure if we want this to be a successful pollinator garden, the lighting needs to be as reduced as possible in those areas.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve with the inclusion of the lighting items?
I will make that motion.
Okay.
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Marilee seconds. Let's see, Katie.
Aye.
I vote aye. Patrick?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Kimberly?
Aye.
Mike made the
Aye.
motion. And Marilee seconded, so motion carries. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation and best of luck.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next agenda item is the Dark Sky Work Group updates.
Sure. So we met last month and we started going through to go over some of the UDO stuff. We decided that it was going to be really difficult to make recommendations for the EAB without having a more updated UDO. So we took a stab at going through that. We're skipping our meeting tomorrow due to lots of scheduling conflicts. We're going to meet in October. And between now and then, each of us is going to read through the UDO, have recommendations, things we want to update, just kind of give it a final once over. And then we're going to walk through all the changes at our next meeting in October and try to get that updated so then we can get the UDO updated and then know what our next step above for the EAB will be.
Okay. Are you are any of you on that Dark Sky Facebook page for Apex?
I am.
You are. Did you see that? I think it was yesterday or the day before how Raleigh was going to turn down non-essential lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually for my job, we are doing a facility assessment of the Public Safety Center in downtown, and they have humongous, very inefficient floodlights that shine on the upper level due to it being a prison. And I actually asked that question if they were considered essential or non-essential, and they didn't know. So they don't know if their lights are being turned on. I said, well, I don't think you need this many because there are probably 20, if not more, per side. And we're talking like lights that are like, you know, almost 2.5 feet in diameter. And so I was like, well, maybe that's something you should consider going forward. So I doubt they'll consider it being a prison and their lights are already super inefficient, but it was one of those things in my mind. I was like, a bird just gonna fly right into this building.
Yeah. I don't know if you all have walked around at night, but the town campus is very lit up. You definitely do not need a flashlight to walk around there at night. So hopefully some of your suggestions will assist with that. Okay, well, thank you all for doing that and taking that on. All right. Anything else regarding dark sky? Okay. UDO amendment prioritization.
Yes. So a couple months ago, Shelley brought up the idea of the board prioritizing the UDO amendments in question that have been discussed so far. And unfortunately, Shelley is sick tonight, so she's not able to join us. But the upside is that we got Amanda. So I know that Amanda might be able to inform, you know, what the timelines could look like. But so far, what is on the amendment priorities list, or the amendment list to prioritize rather, are the conservation subdivisions, the dark sky amendments, which are still in process, and potentially the EV updates, and going through with the NC building code litigation process. That is all I have on my list. And so, you know, we can potentially circle back to the EVs if and when the board decides to move forward with that. But for now, we have conservation subdivisions and dark skies. So I'll leave it up to you to discuss how to prioritize this.
Of those two, I think the conservation subdivision should be moved down. And the reason for that is Chatham County has some language in their ordinances about conservation subdivisions. And they have had a number of developers apply for that, but they are finding that their how to say this, their prioritization is really not conservation. There is a density bonus associated with it, and that obviously, you know, it is a big appeal for them. So what they have decided to do is they are undergoing a really large UDO review now in Chatham County. And as part of that, their planning board and an environmental review board are in the process of revising their conservation subdivision language. So I think that we could maybe learn from them. So I would recommend maybe pausing that in Apex unless there is a big desire to go forward with it.
Regarding the EV, look, I'm not sure right now it's worth the time and effort to make a big push to try to get something before the building council. The legislation is gonna stay dead until they have more legislative leadership friendly sponsors. It's never going to get past the first reading in a committee. So I think that angle is dead too for the time being. Unless somebody knows some legislative leader friendly sponsors in the area. So I think probably what we need to focus on is the dark sky stuff for right now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm completely comfortable with that too, because I feel like that's something you guys have worked hard on, and you have a lot of information, and we could probably have some specificity about what would change in the UDO.
Yeah, I think our big key is how detailed to make it. I mean, Raleigh's got a really simplified lighting ordinance. It's really 3 or 4 pages and a few fancy diagrams compared to what some other areas are. So it'll be interesting what we come up with.
I'm looking forward to it.
I am as well.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is dark sky is the one and the main priority. Conservation subdivisions will kind of go to the back burner to watch, for example, and the EVs. I'll go ahead and send you Val's presentation and that information still.
Yeah.
Right, but that will also kind of be to the side for now. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Sounds good.
I think just following up on that a little bit, as we get maybe a few more months of information of what rezonings are approved and what suggested zoning conditions are actually adopted as zoning conditions, when we have a few more months of information, we can look at what is routinely accepted and think about if those things should just become part of the UDO, right? Should we be making those suggestions? But I think it's probably a little bit premature at this point to do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There's no need in rehashing that every time somebody makes a presentation if everybody's going to agree to it.
Yeah, great idea. We'll start documenting that, Katie, and update the board.
Okay. All right. Next agenda item is the Bee City Recognition Program as a suggested environmental zoning condition.
So I got a little excited about this one. It's a little premature. I talked with David this morning and he let me know that there's, like I said before, they're still in the draft stage. So I wouldn't think it would be appropriate to recommend it until it's publicized and published and ready to go, which again should be the first week in October. So hopefully in October we can circle back to this and officially add it to the suggested environmental zoning conditions list. But this could be an opportunity to add something new, or if anybody has a new idea, feel free to bring it up and we can investigate it.
I'd like to ask a question since this is related to potential zoning conditions. What is the timing? I know the program's still in draft form, but what is the timing of when some neighborhood could meet the requirements of the program?
Well, I understand that, it could be an existing development, it could be a new development, right? And as I understand it, I think the very first tier is really easy. I can't remember them off the top of my head. Of course, I'll send the final version to the board when it's done. But from what I remember, what Caitlin shared, that for the draft, it was very easy to achieve the very first tier. And then, of course, it got progressively more difficult and more involved to achieve higher ratings and recognition.
Okay, I'm just more concerned about when that recognition would come and difficulty with enforcing the zoning conditions. So it's just more about the timing of it all, not that it would necessarily be a problem, so without more information, I'll just wait till I see more about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, it also depends on the wording in the conditions list. So it could be simply to apply for one of the tiers. I think that the retreat at Cedar Crossing would qualify with their wildlife habitat. So, something as simple as that. But yeah, you're right. The timing would be interesting. So we would need to coordinate with Bee City on that.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next up, Peak Fest outcomes.
Yeah, I just wanted to open it up to see if anybody had feedback, wanted to communicate some lessons learned or ideas for the future, for those of you who are able to attend.
I thought it was totally awesome. I thought you and Val knocked it out of the park. I felt like people learned a lot about recycling. That was the main thing I think that we succeeded in educating people on. I really enjoyed learning about what goals our fellow citizens have for the town. That was a really fun part of the photo booth. But I think the recycling was super helpful. For me, I might have liked it if we had a handout to go with what we taught, because I think people were interested, learned something, were genuinely surprised by what they learned. And so having a handout might have helped to just solidify their new knowledge. And I thought that the prizes you guys picked were perfect. Generally, I thought it was fantastic.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Megan, were you gonna do a collage or something? Because I know Katie, when I was down there, was sort of the one doing the photo booth. So I wasn't actually seeing what the people were writing. I was doing the recycling stuff. So I don't really know what they were saying about what they would like to see.
Yeah, definitely want to bring that one up because the photo booth was really interesting and exciting. So again, the question is, what do you want to see more of in Apex for our environment? I would say trees was the most popular answer. Parks was really popular. My favorite one was probably magic tricks. We had a lot of kids come up and do the activity with us, and this gigantic globe. Thanks again to Suzanne for making sure that got inflated, and Val for making sure it was deflated.
Did it ever get deflated?
Yeah. So, I am in a class this week, Monday through Friday, which is why you haven't heard from me as much. But I'm back next week, and we'll be sending you all a summary and a collage of all those photos and the outcomes.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, I to sort of echo what Katie said, I do feel like a lot of people learned a lot about recycling and stuff that they didn't know. And yeah, I think we should maybe promote the Waste Wizard next year because people were truly interested. Well, how do I know? How do I figure this out? So that was really great. I do think, though, that we might need to have slots for people to sign up and commit to a specific time because wasn't there, we were short on a couple time slots.
Yeah, we had great help setting up, and between the hours of 11 to shutting it down and closing it up, but between 8 and 11, it was vacant. Yeah.
Okay.
Which wasn't terrible because it's when the 9/11 ceremony was happening, which was an amazing ceremony, and I think a lot of people's attention were there. But I did have to kind of take off the prizes from the table from having people grabbing them. But we can certainly have more official time slot signups next time.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. Did we give out, do you feel like we gave out like not enough prizes or too few, or what do you think about that? Like, did we end up with too much left over?
When we packed up, I didn't take the inventory and I haven't been back yet, but I know we definitely have some leftovers. I would say that it was really unpredictable this time. I mean, the last count for Peak Fest, I think, was 22,000 people. So it was good to be prepared with items. And also, these items won't expire or anything like that. If we have Peak Fest again in May, we can certainly use them again. But the turnout could have been less because of the time that we're in. So it's really hard to say. But it's something I think that's important to note. and keep track.
Got a question about the seeds and stuff. Will those still be good this spring?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. It's
Okay.
kind of like getting a seed packet. They'll be good to go.
Because I got some questions because they're not going to really want to plant it now because they're going to die real fast. Won't have a chance to grow in the fall. So I did have to fudge on a few answers, saying sure they'll last without knowing.
Well, you did well
for
going
sure.
with your gut instinct because you were right. But yes, next time we can have a more like of an informational sheet. I think Suzanne, we got a question about what kind of flowers we're gonna grow and if they were native and questions like that. So I mean, having an informational sheet next time about the time frame of planting, best time to plant, what kind of seeds there are, I think would be good.
Yeah. And I do think too, for next time, if you do have the photo booth, which I still think was just so awesome, and a recycling game plus the tent, you almost need like 3 people per shift, because Katie was sort of walking people to the photo booth and, somebody else was doing the recycling game. And then a third person was sort of manning the booth and handing out the prizes and doing the prize wheel. So I almost think you need like at least 3 people per time slot. But otherwise, it was awesome. It was super fun.
It was.
Did get some questions on what the board is. So and that notebook about the board was looked at when I was working it. So a lot of people were opening it up. So
awesome.
For what it's worth.
I'm glad.
Hey, Suzanne, this is Brett. I think on behalf of the town council, I wanted to thank you guys for volunteering and fulfilling some of the educational aspects of this EAB. And, I was involved with both the creation of the EAB and then Megan and her department getting that going. So I had a ton of pride kind of observing you guys in action. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else regarding Peak Fest? Okay. Any items for open discussion? All right. Keep this meeting to about an hour. So if there's no more items for open discussion, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All right. Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second.
All right. Marilee seconds. Now let's vote. Katie has left us. I vote aye. Patrick, he's left us. John, obviously aye. Bill?
Aye.
Kimberly?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And Marilee?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight, and we will see you next time.